Welcome to Books, Booze, and Murder. I'm Anna.
I'm Alexa.
We're two besties who love to read and have an obsession with true crime. Oh, fuck. I fucked up.
We fucked up.
You didn't fuck up. I fucked up.
Technology sucks. It's great when it works, but technology sucks.
So if you're like, what the hell are they talking about? Since day one, I have been paranoid about making sure that our episodes record and we have no problems. And for the first time, I went to go edit.
And it wasn't there.
There were no files. There was nothing on the SD card. And I was like, if I wasn't so tired right now, I would be sobbing. So
you were in panic mode.
I was petrified to tell you what happened because we are so busy right now in our personal lives where I'm like,
shit.
Yep. So I appreciate you with your flexibility. I feel awful. So with that said, for this month, if our reactions don't seem
quite as genuine,
or we go through some things faster than usual, it's because
we already heard it.
Yep.
Oopsies.
Oopsies.
Sorry, not sorry.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you so much.
You know what? Idea. This works out nicely too, because now that the school week is over, it's now my 2 weeks of spring break. And I'm just like, I don't care about anything else right now. I don't give a flying fuck about anything. We survived the week.
Yeah.
And frankly, walking into this week, I was like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm toast. I don't want to do it.
Well, yeah, you went on a whole rampage about we're in the final week before break. Holy shit.
Yeah. God bless all the teachers that are either not on spring break yet or like I hope everyone is on spring break by this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't
excuse the growling monster.
Yeah, Luke is like, can we
play with me,
what else
human?
Is new?
Yeah, well.
So I will say, after we recorded last week, I was like, okay, there is a lot of Luke action going on. So we both listened to And That's Why We Drink. I know you're busy, so I don't know if you're remotely caught up on recent episodes.
Nope.
So M is fostering a dog.
Wow, good for her.
Them.
Sorry,
they them.
Good for them. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. It happens. But they're fostering a dog right now, and the amount of distraction that dog had for them, I was like, we're not the only ones.
No.
Nope.
No. So. Christine must put the dog away somewhere else.
Yeah, Christine, her dog Geo, has him somewhere else. If anything, her daughter Leona comes in and is like, hi.
That works.
Hi, mama. So I don't feel bad whatsoever. So we just wanted to start off by saying we apologize. I apologize to you. And with our fancy dancy soundboard right now, we are in good shape.
I hope so.
Thank God. All right.
Okay.
What you got for a drink this month? What you got for me?
What I got for you? Oh, goodness. Now I have to actually remember what I actually did. So that's...
We posted on Instagram.
I'm not prepared. Shocking. I'm not prepared. This one I did actually post on Instagram. So.
Yes, you did. So you can refer back to that.
Well,
see,
that's what I'm going
prepared,
to do.
And I fucked shit up.
I was ready for it.
Yes,
it just didn't happen. So, that's right. It was a twist. It was your standard vodka. It was a twist on your standard vodka cranberry, but we stuck with the cranberry juice. But then instead of normal vodka, I threw in some grapefruit and rose vodka for our book feature, The Rose Code.
It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant.
Some days I amaze myself.
Cool.
And then other days it's, how did you get dressed this morning without putting things on backwards?
I've had coworkers who've done that. Not gonna lie. I don't judge.
No, this is a no judgment zone.
No
this is totally a no judgment zone.
All right.
So, other than like the panic of recording from the beginning of this week, how's your week been?
Shit. You know, I am one that loves to go on vacation once a year.
Mhm.
Like a big vacation. Like last year, my parents, my husband, and I went on a cruise to Greece.
Mhm.
Dad paid for almost every single bit of it, and I've told him ever since, and even before that, I appreciate you. Thank you. This was a trip of a lifetime.
Yeah.
So with that said, we have officially booked our vacation for this year, which
Mhm.
is next month.
Mhm.
But I am so ready for vacation because it's been a good year. Like, yeah, we went away in September for a few days, but it's not the same as like an actual vacation where you don't have to worry about a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
So this past week was a struggle because I was like, I'm burned out.
Yeah.
I need a break.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
So we are officially going to California and going on a road trip from San Francisco to Vegas. And we booked all of that last night.
That was all last night? I thought you had already had that booked.
Well,
You had
here-
it planned, it wasn't booked.
yeah. So we bought our plane tickets about a week ago.
Okay.
And a week ago yesterday.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah, so we booked our plane tickets, and then we wanted to do a little bit more research because when we booked them, it was kind of like in a rush, and I was like, "Watch you book something in a rush and something gets messed up."
Always.
So we had to, as you know, my husband and I have very different schedules, so getting us in the same room together
Right.
outside of a weekend is impossible.
Is impossible.
So we did have everything planned out, and we finally paid for everything as far as like we're gonna go visit Alcatraz, and we're going to visit the Winchester Mystery House, and
Ooh.
we're gonna see some shows in Vegas, and we're gonna see some family, and yeah, we finally pulled the trigger on that last night. But
Mhm.
the holdup for all this is we've had this trip planned, as you said, for months.
Right.
But living in the troll hole,
Uh-huh.
we do not have full decision-making capabilities as far as who's gonna watch our dogs.
Right.
And my in-laws, I'm very thankful that I'm living with them right now and we don't have to pay rent. But getting the consent from them that we can have a friend of ours in the house
Come dog sit.
yes, that
Mhm.
was the big thing. It took a good 2 months to get them to consent to it.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
So that was very anxiety inducing. So this week was finally like putting all the plans in motion on
Mhm.
top of the guilt for this.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah. And you said you're happy you're finally on spring break.
I'm finally on spring break. My husband and I are leaving
Good.
to go down to North Carolina tomorrow. And it's going to be a quick turnaround trip, but like we're going and we're getting away.
Yeah.
We're going to have 14 to 16 hours in the car together, just him and I. We
Yeah.
like our long car rides.
Okay.
We usually we'll throw on a book on tape or a comedy show
Mhm.
or name another thing.
Yeah.
And we'll probably get out and walk a lot more than we usually do just because, long car rides suck
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah. But like you've had a really busy life. Like you and your husband are really busy too. So as you had
Yes.
mentioned, I actually, despite the long car ride, spending time with him,
Mhm.
you can't get that time back.
Mhm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm super psyched to be able to say I'm going to go and actually spend time with my husband since my husband's not been getting home until like 11 o'clock.
Holy shit.
3 nights this week, maybe midnight, 3 nights this week. So I don't see him
Oh
at
my
dinner
God.
time. It's okay.
I mean, you do what you got to do, but it doesn't mean it's ideal by any means.
No,
And you're going to see Disturbed, right?
we are going to go see Disturbed.
Nice. Channeling our emo selves.
Super excited. Super
Oh,
excited.
awesome. I love it. So, yeah, this second time, I think we're a little bit more chill.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, what you got for me as far as the summary goes?
As far as this summary, let's do this all again.
Yep.
Here we go. But the Rose Code, I really enjoyed this book. And there were many times I forgot this was a historical read. I also was blown away at the end to realize how true some of it really must be. Because a lot of the times, like you read these books and they're historical and they've been changed ever so slightly. But it's
Mhm.
like, this was a true, like, the names of the people are pretty darn accurate.
Yeah.
But let's start from the beginning. We start in the late 1930s during World War II. America has not entered the war in Europe yet, but Hitler is making his way through with little resistance. In that day, many men were being shipped off to the front lines while the women were actually getting jobs on the home front. Much like Rosie the Riveter in America, but instead of working in factories, many of them were recruited to work on decrypting messages from the Reich or translating messages. One such headquarter of operation was called Bletchley Park, and also where our three main characters meet and work together for the entirety of the war effort. Osla, who grew up being shipped off to all different boarding schools because her mother was too busy to bother with her child, became fluent in many languages and became a key translator. She was also one of the most determined workers with the need to feel valued at Bletchley Park. She was continuously working, thinking, and advancing herself for other jobs that she deemed were more important. This is probably due to everyone thinking of her as a silly Deb, and she continuously works to prove that she is so much more. When we first meet Osla, she's walking home from her job working on airplane rivets in coveralls. She meets a handsome young man who she goes dancing with in her coveralls, but her nice dancing shoes. She ends up falling head over heels for him. His name is Philip, and he is a distant prince to the Greek crown, but a prince nonetheless. He also has sisters that are married to Nazi sympathizers. Mab is another that was recruited to work at Bletchley and learned how to run and repair bomb machines that interpreted the data that was input and can type out a message that was decrypted. As long as the right information was inputted, way faster than any one person could by hand. Mab's biggest goal is to find herself a suitable husband so her sister/daughter can have a better life than she could ever give her. This is a story that she divulges later in the story and tells of her thinking she was in love, but then being dumped unceremoniously by the biggest dick of his time because Mab wouldn't also sleep with his friends. Gross. This was also like in the back of a car too. And I was just like, you're a disgusting human.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please rot somewhere.
Yep.
Unholy. But she does end up finding a husband that will love her and her daughter without judgment. But she tragically loses them both in a bombing that Beth knew about.
That was the worst. That was the worst.
Oh my gosh, it was awful. Because, of course, it was like, so in the book, what happens? There's a bombing, and Osla is with them because Mab wants to have time with her husband. So she's got to have someone to also watch her daughter. And then the daughter goes and runs off because she's like, oh my gosh, I forgot this, my most important thing. And of course, she's 7 at this point.
Yeah, she's not
8.
very old.
She's not very old. So, of course, like small material things are extremely important to her.
Yeah.
And so she runs back to the house that they're staying in to get this super important item. What was it? I can't even remember.
So the husband, Francis, had surprised her. So she loved horseback riding.
Right.
And I'm only going over this because Alexa read this book quite a bit ago, and I read it more recently. So Francis had bought her all new riding gear and was getting her set up down the road with horseback riding lessons.
Right.
And he'd surprised her with brand new riding boots.
That's what it was. I thought it was boots. I couldn't say the wrong thing.
It's all good. It's all good.
So she ran back for the riding boots, and then, of course, Francis run backs in as well. And then, of course, as he's carrying her out of the house after the bombing is done, the walls of the house collapse on them. It's like, oh, come on.
If it wasn't for the fact that I respect books, meaning like the physical object, I would have thrown this book across the room because I was like, no.
Yep.
Fuck this.
Yep.
I was not happy.
Bad.
That was pretty bad.
That was bad. That was tragic. So at first, Mab blames Osla because Osla was the one holding her daughter's hand and then let go. She becomes extremely bitter and hates Osla until she finds out that Beth knew about the bombing and then blames her. You know, that kind of shit makes you do weird things.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
These two young ladies are billeted in the Finch household just outside of Bletchley Park. This is where they meet probably the brightest mind to enter Bletchley Park, Beth Ann Finch. Beth is quiet, withdrawn, and is constantly told that she is dumb and useless. Her mother only sees her as her errand girl and the perfect daughter only when she follows the Bible to the letter of the law and obeys her every wish. Osla and Mab quickly recognize Beth's talents and get her a job at Bletchley, which of course infuriates Mrs. Finch because then Mrs. Finch doesn't actually know what Beth what Beth is doing all day. And
Yep.
she's like, I have to know. You have to tell me. You have to tell me right now. And it's like, nope, I'm actually not allowed to.
I was like, fuck her.
Yeah, Mrs. Finch sucks. And because of the work they do, they are not allowed to reveal anything about their work. When Ozla and Mab first arrive at Bletchley, they are instructed to tell anyone who asks about their work that they work extremely boring secretarial jobs. But their jobs are very important.
Yes.
Surrounded by some of the most brilliant minds of their time, they are also sworn to secrecy about anything they may come across in their line of work. Beth, being one of the brightest minds under Dilly Knox, works to build her self-confidence on the job and continue to do everything that her mother expects of her. Beth slowly becomes more and more confident in herself and starts to stand up to her mother more and more. Beth starts to refuse to hold the Bible for extended periods of time, will no longer allow her to pinch her arms and bruise her, and has even adopted a dog without her mother's blessing.
That physical abuse was really hard to read. I was
Yeah,
like,
it was
oh
tough.
my God.
That's tough. It's like, wait, that's your daughter.
Yeah.
That's your grown adult daughter. Okay. Anyway. One night when all the girls have to work late at Bletchley to help the Allied powers break German code on one of the biggest breaks for the Allied powers, the dog makes a mess on the floor and Mrs. Finch throws the dog out. Instead of just letting the dog out, because dogs need to go and use the facilities as well.
And then the dad, I think, when Beth was like, what the hell? He was like, your mother told me I shouldn't. Like, grow up hair, dude. Grow up hair.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of him either.
No.
Spineless. When Beth, Ozla, and Mab get back to the house, they immediately start looking for the dog. It's on this night that Beth slaps her mother. Hang on.
Go, Beth. Go, Beth.
Do not chew on that.
Luke's like, I'm going to chew on anything to get mom's attention. Oh, no, that was a cable. That's not good.
Oh, it's the Velcro that was on the cable that helps keep it all wrapped up. Jackass.
Turd.
Excuse me. It's on this night that Beth slaps her mother and stands her ground, and all three girls move out of the Finch household. This is also like midnight or something. As time goes on, she becomes more bold and brave and ends up having an affair with a married man who has a son with polio. He will never leave his wife, but they have a mutual agreement that they can see whoever they like as long as their son comes first, which seems to be working out for them. Like, power to them. But as the story keeps jumping, we quickly realize that Beth is in an asylum and was wrongfully placed there because she was about to uncover a traitor and break the Rose Code wide open. This person was feeding secrets to the Soviets, and Beth had been trying to figure out for 3.5 years who the traitor might be and how she can manage to get out of the madhouse. The royal wedding is our countdown because the day after is when Beth is scheduled for a lobotomy. So she is frantically trying to find a way and hope that Mab and Ozla got the letters that she smuggled out and come to see her. And that, I got to say, that is one thing that the dad did right, is the dad got the letters out and sent them.
Yeah.
Of all the things, I'll give him credit. It was the best thing that he could have done for her in that moment. Holy smokes, bro, though. Spineless.
I wouldn't be surprised if he felt guilt for what he did to have Beth leave.
Yeah.
And this was his way of making it up.
Oh, sure. I have no doubts about that at all. In this turmoil after the war, Ozla is writing a gossip column and is still frantically trying to be something more than just a silly Deb. She is engaged to a man who doesn't listen to her, doesn't know what she likes, and cheats on her. Ozla doesn't care. She just desperately wants to find home. She ended up breaking up with her prince boyfriend because her higher-ups at Bletchley were suspecting that she was feeding him secrets to give to his in-laws. Oh, and did I mention that the royal wedding is between her ex-boyfriend, Prince Philip, and the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth? Also, Ozla also had to leave shortly before breaking up with him and ended up in the middle of bombing. A good Samaritan gave her his jacket and helped her. She ended up writing to him throughout the war, almost like a pen pal with no reply, and told him her woes. Her letters go unanswered until the very end of the novel. Mab finds another husband, has twins, and tries to forget the husband and daughter she lost. In doing so, she shuts out her new husband in any way possible while trying to maintain her marriage. I should mention that one of the first people that Ozla and Mab meet at Bletchley is a man named Giles Talbot. He becomes friends with all three women and remains a background character throughout the book until a few days before the royal wedding, when Beth is hoping that Ozla and Mab will come for her. She gets another visitor, Giles Talbot, and he ends up being the traitor feeding secrets to the Soviets.
Fuck Giles. Fuck
Dude,
you.
right? And he keeps trying to justify it all the way up until the end. And I'm like,
You're awful.
what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And when Ozla and Mab feed their significant others some lies and make their way to the asylum begrudgingly, we also find out that the Giles is Ozla's fiance. I almost had a weird suspicion about that, like throughout the book, where I'm like, this fiance's got to be someone we know, because they just keep saying the fiance.
Ooh.
They just keep saying the fiance. It's got to be one of these people that we already know. Craziness. That was kind of a wild turn of events.
I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. But that is when the plan starts forming of breaking Beth out, getting the documents that she hid with the encrypted Rose Code, and reassembling many of the other people that were at Bletchley Park to help crack the code. They end up cracking the code in just the nick of time. Yeah, of course. And then the next part of the plan has to begin, getting Giles to MI5 so he can spend his time behind bars.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. The plan almost succeeds until the big royal wedding, when Ozla and Giles are supposed to go to the wedding, but then Giles finds the picture of Beth in the paper about her escaping the asylum and makes a run for it. The group of code breakers is on the hunt on foot during the busiest day of the year, with little to no idea where Giles might have gone. They end up finding him in a train station, tackle him, and everyone gets arrested and thrown in jail. It's fair, fine, totally get it. Ozla turns on the charm and is able to get herself a phone call. In the process, she still has the jacket the Good Samaritan let her borrow after the bombing many, many years ago, and she held on to it ever since. The constable is called because it's his jacket. He was the Good Samaritan that saved Ozla, and of course, they end up getting married. Mab finds out her husband also worked on the bomb machines during the war, and they are able to reconcile their marriage.
Yeah.
And Beth ends up with Harry, her married man, and is happy with their arrangement of just being together. Wow, Luke, tell me more. Good God. At the very end of the novel, we read an excerpt from a gossip column that floated around Bletchley, talking about the restoration of Bletchley Park by Duchess Kate Middleton, as her grandmother was part of the war effort at Bletchley and knew some women there named Ozla, Mab, and Beth.
Oh, so good.
It was so good.
Oh, so good.
It was so good.
Yeah.
I love these types of books.
I definitely thought, like, overall, I really loved the storyline, but I did think it was a slow pace until the last 100 pages.
Right.
And, like, I'd mentioned this a week ago when we recorded first time. I, like, still remember just trying to power through the last, like, bit of the book. I get through the first 100 pages and then it speeds up. And I was like, I can't put this book down. Thank God it's a weekend night. And my husband's like, go to bed. And I go, no, I have 1 page left.
No,
leave me alone.
Not.
Yeah, no, oh my gosh. I thoroughly enjoyed the storyline. And I do agree with you by, like, we have to remind ourselves that this was essentially a true story.
Yeah.
And,
crazy, wild.
Yeah. And I was just really surprised that when it came to Lucy and Mab, I was able to connect that, like, they were not just sisters.
Yeah.
Like, the way that Mab is treating her, yeah.
Like, there's no way that's just your sister, because your mom is nonchalant. No,
Yeah.
just very, like, blasé.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's swapped.
Yeah.
Usually the sister's like that, and the mom is all the things.
And I really appreciated the representation with Beth regarding, like, she was most likely autistic.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like, this representation of this mindset, like, again, like, it reminds me of Bones,
Yeah.
the TV show.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, this is almost comical at times. And other times I
Mhm.
want to smack her, but I'm
Uh-huh.
also like, she can't help her brain. She can't help it. And then, um, yeah, the fact that we never really learn what the rose code says, but it leads to everything.
Yeah.
That was one thing where like this doing this is really helpful because I'm like, wait, did it actually say anything? I don't remember. Am I just missing something? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it just reveals Giles as the traitor.
Hmm.
I think that was the biggest thing that it revealed.
Yeah.
So it's like, "Oh, okay then."
And of course, when it came to the asylum part, I was like,
Oh.
my blood was boiling. And like, that's the point.
Mhm.
But then I just, it blew my mind that I'm reading about lobotomies. Like, eh,
Lobotomies are yucky.
and then
The fact that we actually did that to people
oh my God.
is amazing to me.
Like, the world isn't perfect, but I am so
Yeah.
thankful that we are not doing that shit, or I don't think we're doing that shit anymore. But that it
Uh-huh.
was, like, so mind-boggling because the word lobotomies came up, like, once or twice
Mhm.
when I was finishing this book
Mhm.
at work, and I was like, "What the hell?"
Yeah. And of course, when all of this was happening to Beth is when it was all brand new to people. So Beth was like, "I don't know what a lobotomy is. Doesn't sound good though."
Yeah, and then she saw her friend got one, and she was like,
Yeah.
"The one thing that's getting me through this awful place is my brain. I can't lose my brain."
Yeah. She has a good brain. She has a really good brain.
Ugh.
Yeah, yucky.
I'm not
That's
that
it.
smart. I'm not that smart. All of this, I'm not
Yucky.
that smart. All right. There was one thing I wanted to bring up. I don't remember. Oh, that's what it was. So we definitely wanted to pay tribute to a couple different things.
Uh-huh.
So for those that really enjoyed the concept of Bletchley Park and
Mhm.
like what they did, there was a series from the BBC called The Bletchley Circle. And this is just straight from Wikipedia. It's a television mystery drama series set in 1952 to 1953 about four women who worked as code breakers at Bletchley Park. Dissatisfied with the officials' failure to investigate crimes, the women join to investigate for themselves. So the first series of the miniseries produced for ITV, or we don't live in England. I don't know what the fuck that
That's
is.
fair.
It was originally shown in the UK in 2012 and premiered in the US in April of 2013 on something we recognize, PBS.
Yes.
A second series was broadcast on ITV in January of 2014 and on PBS in April of that year. And both series were later aired by Australia's ABC TV, and it was then distributed worldwide. So, unfortunately, the program wasn't renewed for a third series, which I guess translation would be season. However, in 2018, a spin-off titled The Bletchley Circle San Francisco was announced by ITV and BritBox. So if you really enjoyed this and you have access to all of that, it's
Mhm.
probably something to check out for sure.
Mhm.
And then so we had discussed March 31st, so the very end of last month, if you're listening to this in April of 2025,
Mhm.
a code breaker did pass away, so it only seemed fitting for us to pay tribute to
Yeah.
someone who was there.
Yeah, for sure.
So at the end of March, Bletchley code breaker Betty Webb dies at age 101.
Bless her.
And let me tell you, so this article is from the BBC. This actually popped up on my Facebook feed
Uh-huh.
because, well, my phone's stalking me.
Uh-huh. Phone
She looks
technology.
pretty good for 101.
Yeah, she does. Looks like she's walking and everything.
Yeah. So a decorated World War II codebreaker spent her youth deciphering enemy messages at Bletchley Park, has died at the age of 101. So Charlotte or Betty Webb, MBE, who was among the last surviving Bletchley codebreakers, died. And this was confirmed by the Women's Royal Army Corps Association. She was from, I'm just going to say this, Worcestershire, and
Yep.
joined
Yep.
operations at the base at the age of 18, later going on to help with Japanese codes at the Pentagon in the US. And she was awarded France's highest honor in 2021, which, like,
Very cool.
and that's what we talked about when it came to Harry, was like, these people
Mhm.
had to, these individuals had to work under the radar,
Yep.
and no one knew their impact.
Yep.
So it's like, yeah, she should have gotten that.
Yeah, poor Harry just got like shit on through the entire book because of course it was very frowned upon to not go and fight in war if you were not a man. But it's like, no, Harry was smart and he was able to go and use his brain for better things other than just shooting other people.
Yeah.
So it's awful that he got shamed so hard that he ended up going to war anyways and leaving Bletchley.
Mhm.
That was wild to me.
And I hated that his son was was used, like, his son was beat up because of his
Your
dad.
dad's a coward. That sucked.
And then the fact that this kid wasn't invited to different things because of that, I'm like,
Uh-huh.
this kid doesn't deserve that.
Mm-mm.
Um, let's see. Yeah, so kudos to Betty Webb. Thank you for your service. Like, our hearts go out to your family members if they ever hear this.
Yeah.
So I think we're in good shape.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, and then another thing, um,
Yeah, we talked about this at the very beginning of the episode last time,
yeah,
but just want to, put it out there that Meta AI has been kind of taking books from Meta AI and LibGen have been taking authors' books without their permission, without anything else to try and improve their own editing software,
yeah, teaching AI.
teaching AI how to just write better. But like these are authors' livelihoods. If you really want to teach AI to write better, how about at least buy a copy of the book?
Yeah,
Talk to the author about it if you want to use it, because 7.5 million books were pirated using Meta
yeah.
AI. And I'm like,
And like some of our favorite authors were victim to that. Like you
yeah,
love Jodi Picoult, which
love
this
Jodi.
was, I think, that was our second book that we did on this
Yes.
podcast.
Yes, it was.
And she was a victim to that.
Yeah, that sucks.
And
It's just not fair.
And it's also, so in addition to the author's livelihood, like editors are out there for a reason, because
Right.
anyone writing isn't perfect with spelling and grammar and all of that. And it's editors' livelihoods too, and publishing houses. So
Yeah.
it's fucked up.
So thankfully they have a lawsuit open, Cadre versus Meta. And it sounds like if your pirated book has been used, then you're automatically included in this class action lawsuit,
Mhm.
which is, I'm like, good.
Yeah.
Freaking hope so.
Absolutely. Like that. As readers, we enjoy the work that countless hours have gone into in a single book,
Yeah.
and it's fucked up.
Yeah. It's messed up.
And so to go along with that, and I actually didn't bring this up last time because I forgot.
Mhm.
So I wanted to kind of give you some information about libraries because I didn't know this.
Okay.
So if you've been with us for a little while, you know that we do have TikTok. So on there is a woman named Carol, and she is a library director. And she actually posted about ebooks, and she
Okay.
goes, they're not unlimited as far as loans go. Like, did you know that?
They're not unlimited as far as
Like,
loans go.
you can't, like, if you're on Libby, and you borrow a book, like,
Someone else can't borrow it as well.
well, it's more of, so libraries buy the rights to a book for an ebook.
Basically, they have so many times they can loan it out to people.
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
So there's a license that libraries purchase, and it's 12 or 24 months.
Okay.
And to kind of say, like, with physical books, and this part, because I was like, well, what about physical book? Like, how does that work?
Right.
So a physical book can undergo about 60 to 80 loans before the actual condition of the book makes
Just
it.
degraded so much.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of those things where, like, I personally don't have an Amazon account. I
Right.
haven't had one since COVID because I
Right.
was like, I would rather support smaller businesses.
Right.
And I know a lot of people are like, Kindle Unlimited, that's an option. And I just want to, like, put it out there that there are other platforms for reading a book or listening to a book. Like,
Mhm.
you talk about Libro FM
Mhm.
all the time.
Mhm.
And then of course there's Libby through the library.
Yep.
And also there's bookshop.org, which you know that pretty well because it supports one of our local bookshops.
Okay.
So it's a larger platform
Yep.
where you can buy a book online. It's a tiny bit more expensive than going to another online seller,
Sure.
but part of those funds go towards helping keep a local
Right.
chapter. And that's kind of what's leading me into Silent Book Club, which that's all over the country as far as I know, the
Pretty
United
cool.
States. So one of the booksellers that's involved in our local chapter is a bookshop.org
Right.
participant. Um, and like this is my little side rant. I have been attending our local chapter. I know you've been really busy, so I'm like, I'll
I
go by
can't.
myself.
I
Yeah.
can't.
You're at your max. You're a teacher. You're at your max.
I can't. I teach, I coach, I can't.
Yeah. This is for the arguably late teens, early 20s, because I had this experience. It does not in any shape or form reflect the organizers behind our chapter. It doesn't reflect any of there's two booksellers for our chapter because
Mhm.
it's anyway, this
Mhm.
doesn't reflect them. But if you are a young 20-year-old and you ask for a suggestion from someone,
Mhm.
and I guess I'm saying this because I'm hurt about it.
Okay.
So I attended our local chapter last month,
Yep.
and one of the booksellers brought in a ton of books that have not been published.
Mhm.
And the concept is these publishing houses are seeing people are attending these silent book clubs and people
Right.
are passionate. And the idea is having members read these books that haven't been published yet and going on social media and talking about it, which
Right.
I honestly think is genius.
Yeah, it's nice. It's very cool.
So I had a young individual approach me and they said, my friend was supposed to come with me tonight, but something happened. Are you into romance books? And I was like, absolutely. And
Mhm.
she was like, would you mind like picking out one or two books for me to send to my friend? And I was like, absolutely. Like, that's
Sure.
what we're here for. And I go, what does your friend like?
Mhm.
And she goes, I don't know.
That's not helpful.
Exactly. I thought the same thing. So I'm like quickly reading through some of these backgrounds and I picked two books. One was a little bit more serious, one was like a cheesy rom-com type thing.
Sure.
And I told her that. I was like, here are two books, like take it or leave it. None of these books actually cost anything.
Right.
And I was like, one of them is pretty cheesy, one of them is a little bit more serious, like have at it. And she's like, oh, thank you so much.
Mhm.
5 minutes later, now keep in mind where this person was situated near me
Mhm.
was like the next table over, which was a
Mhm.
matter of a couple feet.
Mhm.
Like 5 minutes later, a friend approaches her and she's like, oh, like it's great to see you. And I learned like the friend ended up going to the wrong location and didn't want to
Mm.
drive to the next town over where we were.
Sure.
And then she started shit talking the books that I sent her way.
It's like, mm,
So it's like,
mm,
when you ask someone for help and you don't give them much to work off of, they're not going to take offense if you put it back, or at least I'm not going to.
I would hope not.
Yeah. And then also, don't shit talk someone who helped you.
And is also sitting right there.
Yeah. So that is my side rant. Again, this doesn't reflect anything by the people
Mhm.
hosting it. But if you are of this personality, please be mindful when someone helps you. That's my rant.
Okie dokie.
Okay.
Ay, ay, ay.
All right.
Yikes.
Thank you for hearing me out. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
anytime. You know me.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
People.
Yeah. So needless to say, our next chapter is holding another gathering next week, and I am going.
There you go.
But it's at the other location, a little bit farther away. It's fine. They're all very kind.
They're cool.
Yeah.
I like them.
They're awesome. All right. Let's turn the page over to true crime because I need some bitching to do.
Yeah.
Okay. We are going to cover modern code breakers, and I'm specifically referring to Kristen and David Middleman, and they are the owners of Othram. And I don't want this to be seen as a sales pitch for them, so here are other labs that I was able to find, just a quick Google search,
Yep.
that are private and conduct forensic DNA analysis for law enforcement. So, and I apologize if I butcher pronunciation, I'm not known for nailing that. We have Astria Forensics, Intermountain Forensics, Parabon Nanolabs, which I have heard of that.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's RGEN Inc. It's all caps RG. I don't know.
Mhm.
DNA Labs International, Bode Technology, Sorensen Forensics, and Rapid DNA Testing. And I honestly, the story is a little bit longer, so I didn't do a deep dive into these, but
Right.
there's names.
Right.
So, sources for this month include an episode of 2020, the Baylor alum website, a very well done article that was written by Ken Kolker with KTSM 9 News, and the Western Michigan University website as their cold case program, which I think is super cool,
Uh-huh.
in 2023 contributed to solving this case.
Very cool.
So, Kristen was born. Yeah, now I'm remembering. I was like, Alexa, you could relate to this.
Uh-huh.
Because with your Greek background. Okay, so
Yes.
Kristen was born and primarily grew up in Greece before her family moved to Texas when she was 14. And education was something that meant a lot to her. And I think, like a lot of people in this world, she wanted to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So when it came for her to go to college, she chose to go to Baylor because it was close enough for home for family visits. And overall, the campus made her feel very welcome, which that's a big part of the college search.
Yes. Yes, it is.
She majored in biochemistry and worked closely with Dr. Mary Lynn Trowick, an associate professor of chemistry and biochemistry. These people are way smarter than I'll ever be.
Me too. Me too.
Dr. Trowick allowed Kristen to do different types of lab work, which prompted her to realize this was something she wanted to make a living in. So after graduating from Baylor in 2000, she was accepted into the PhD program at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, and that is where she met her husband, David. And at the time of their meeting in 2000, Jesus Christ, she was working with blind mice. David was around, and through his work, he cured her blind mice. And this is where we're like, love it for science.
Duh.
And when it comes to David, respectfully, he does come across as super socially awkward, but he was also super smart. So very similar to Beth.
Okay, there you go.
Growing up, he was interested in DNA, and when he was at UT Southwestern Medical School in Dallas, he was working for his first human genome project, or working on, excuse me. He was 15.
Yeah, that's wild. You are 15 and you're working on human genomes. I didn't know what human genomes were at 15.
No.
I don't think I even know what they are specifically now.
I don't either.
It's fine. It's not my specialty.
No.
So moving on.
Yep. He would continue to partake in an international research effort to create a detailed catalog of human genetic variation. And as we just said, we're like, what? So for your average individual, what does this mean? It led to standards that are used today by the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, for gene sequencing in medicine. I still need to do a little bit more thinking on that. It's just not probably ever going to happen anytime soon.
My brain don't work that way.
Especially today. My brain's like, nope. So they got
Nope.
They got married and completed their PhDs before pursuing independent careers for a while. And that is until David realized that law enforcement was using technology that was limited, and he knew that better technology was out there, just not being used. And he knew you could use a decades-old DNA, put it into a database, and then build a family tree for a suspect before going into the courtroom to defend said science. So for him, it felt wrong that all these resources were available, but there was a backlog of unsolved cases.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when he told Kristen that he wanted to start a forensic lab. And she was like, say what?
Mm-hmm.
Huh? Are you out of your mind?
Okay.
She understood that they'd have to gain law enforcement's trust before they could do anything. And she honestly didn't think anyone would come.
Ignore the growling dog.
Yeah. Hi, Luke. So to that, he essentially said, challenge accepted. And that's when Othram was created in 2018. Hi, Luke. He's like, play with me, human. Play with me.
My gosh, she's so pathetic.
So their mission is to develop the most advanced DNA sequencing methods possible to apply those to the specialized needs of a forensic lab, and as opposed to the needs of a medical facility. And according to Kristen, when you go to a doctor and give blood, they get fresh DNA from a single source. So it's not contaminated, nothing's degraded, you're
Right.
good. And of course, for DNA samples from crime scenes, that's not always the case.
Mm-hmm.
And so using traditional methods, scientists doing initial tests might destroy the sample without coming up with a usable match. And this would not allow for retesting in the future. So for Othram, they were able to figure out how to look at a small portion of DNA, including one that's been burned or exploded, which a week later, that still sounds terrifying to me. I'm not
Yes,
going to
DNA that's been exploded. Like, oh, okay.
lie. And they know how to make it readable and trackable. So, to get a sense of how powerful their technology is, if I were to touch you or your hand with my fingertip,
hmm
I'm leaving behind hundreds of cells.
hmm
And they'll be able to use 15 of them from years ago to help solve a case. So,
That's wild.
I don't know if I can process that in
That's
my brain.
major science that I don't have the brain for that.
No, that's why we're not doing it, but we're creating awareness. This is the thing.
Yes.
So that said, within a year, he was up and running with cases. He knew that he had to build a relationship with Texas Rangers in order to get his hands on more DNA, and he did just that. And I don't know if I bring this up. The way he presents himself or presented himself to law enforcement initially, it really earned the respect from a highly respected ranger because he was like, he doesn't care about his appearance. He cares about the work, and
Right.
that I can understand
Yeah.
and respect. And I was like, yes.
Cool.
So more and more cases started to get solved, and then they received more. And not only did they get DNA from across the country, but stuff was sent to them from around the world. And in May of 2024, a project they announced they'd been working on is identifying 525 unidentified children. And this stems from their work with the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, this stuff costs money.
Mm-hmm.
I did see some numbers tossed around and mainly on Reddit. And while that's helpful, I don't consider Reddit to be an unbiased source. So I'm just going to leave it as this. Numbers I saw ranged from hundreds to the early thousands to get a test done. And I think that's when we have to ask ourselves, what's the cost you'd pay to potentially solve a crime when you have
Right.
nothing to lose?
Right.
So with that said, I'm going to cover a couple different cases today that were both solved by code breakers.
There we go. I like it.
So we're going to start off with Kathy Schwartz from Michigan. So growing up, Kathy was a farm girl. She had a pony when she was 8, was part of 4-H, and loved to go hunting with her dad. And I don't know why, doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but her family did move 15 minutes down the road to Three Rivers before her senior year of high school. And her dad ran a pro shop at the local bowling alley. I don't know what that means unless it's selling pro equipment for bowling.
I think that's exactly what it is.
Okay.
That's usually what a pro shop is, like for golf. at a
That's my
country club.
assumption.
So yes, that's my
Okay.
assumption. So dad must have been a big bowler.
I think so. And Kathy was part of a league with her mom there. And she also spent some time working at the local Burger King. So she was keeping busy.
Mm-hmm.
As a teen, she was a lover of rock and roll. We had mentioned Disturbed for me earlier, but we're going to go back to the 80s and AC/DC and Metallica. Hello. And was described as beautiful, happy-go-lucky, sweet, and caring, and a wonderful listener. So in March of 1988, her life changed drastically when she dropped out of high school and gave birth to her daughter, Courtney. During her pregnancy, she became best friends with a girl named Jennifer, who was also a teen mom. Like, I just love how they're both going through a difficult time in their lives, and they're just like, nope, we know what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
We'll lean on each other.
Mm-hmm.
And when Courtney was 6 months old in September, Kathy met Mike. He became a father figure to Courtney in every way and treated Kathy like a queen. So we're talking he'd come home often with flowers, and Kathy gave him little love notes.
I love that. It's adorable.
Yeah.
Make me want to.
So, therefore, it's not completely surprising that in November, 2 months later, they got engaged.
Yeah, it's fast.
It's very fast. But to each their own. Again, it reminds me of Frozen of you got engaged to a man you just met.
That day?
You don't even know if they pick their nose and then they eat it.
What's his middle name? What is he like? What if he snores in his sleep? What if he eats with his mouth open? Like, what?
Yep.
Back up.
But to each their own.
I guess. Good gracious.
So this love story, unfortunately, did end prematurely, not even a month later. So on Kathy's final night, the two ate fish and chips and played board games before going to bed around midnight. At slightly before 5:30 the following morning, Kathy kissed Mike goodbye before he left to go to work at a paper plant. He came home around 3:30 that afternoon and everything changed in his life
Mm.
forever. And so for best friend Jennifer, she knew something was wrong because she could not get a hold of her best friend all day.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know, like aside from what I just previously mentioned, what Kathy did for work, but I will say, and I know the two don't really correlate, but I do know when it comes to Kathy, she was a very protective mom,
Mm-hmm.
which most women are.
Good, as you should be.
Yep. She always kept the door locked to their apartment, even if she was expecting someone to come over. And when they did arrive, they would knock and she'd ask, "Who is it?" And then she'd unlock it. So this is really important. Keep this detail in mind. So when Mike entered the home, he saw drops of blood in the foyer. Initially, he thought Kathy had cut herself, so he didn't think much of it. However, he knew something was wrong when he saw blood smeared on the walls going up the stairs.
No. No.
Yep. He immediately went into Courtney's room to check on her, but fortunately, she was quietly standing in her crib, unharmed. He then went to his bedroom where he saw Kathy. Blood covered her face, and the nightshirt she was wearing was almost pulled completely off.
Yeah, that's awful.
In shock, he screamed her name and went to a neighbor's to call the police before he went back inside to get Courtney. And so we have to remember, this is the late 80s. Like, this is time before really cell phones were used. So I honestly would have done the same thing.
Yeah, right?
And what was strange was the fact that Courtney's diaper was dry.
Yeah, that gives me chills. I don't like that.
So who changed it?
I don't like that at all. No, thank you.
When police arrived, there was no sign of forced entry, prompting them to think that Kathy knew who had killed her. They determined that the assault began in the kitchen, as there were passive blood drops there. And so 2 details to note just randomly. So a detective on scene believed that the perpetrator had turned Kathy's body. Oh, I remember this now, and this is so creepy. Had turned Kathy's body 180 degrees in the doorway so she could look at the baby in the crib.
Yep. Nope. No, thank you. Nope. You a sick, twisted bastard.
Oh, don't we know that? According to a police report, it's thought that they'd also changed the radio station to easy listening, as we know, Kathy was not into that type of music.
No.
The autopsy found that there were 3 separate cuts on her neck. One was over 2 inches and hit both the carotid artery and the right jugular vein, internal jugular vein. Her killer had also strangled her by hand due to multiple abrasions and bruises on her neck, torso, and extremities. In addition, there were defensive wounds on her hands, and her cause of death was a combination of the 2. It's estimated that the beating lasted for 15 minutes due to the color of the bruising.
That's terrible.
Therefore, it's thought that she died a little after noon. And unfortunately, the murder weapon wasn't found, but the theory was that it was a pair of scissors due to an outline on a pair of sweatpants.
Yucky.
I don't think I fully processed this, until now.
Mm-hmm.
I just get chills thinking about this. How sharp those scissors had to have been.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Or how hard they had to jab him in to make him go in. Those ain't kitty scissors, that's
No.
for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
Chills. Okay, so in the bedroom, her phone was located and its cord had been cut. And not only were Kathy's fingerprints on it, but an unknown male's fingerprint in blood as well. And that would be key to this case. In the bathroom, a bloody footprint led investigators to determine that the killer took a shower after the murder in an attempt to clean up before leaving.
Yes, please clean up after yourself after you kill someone. Hate you.
He took the time to make sure. Neighbors go on to say that they hadn't heard a thing during the entire time.
Mhm.
He took the time. Because we already know, but he took the time. Oh, bad.
Continue.
So a second search of the home was done, and even more disturbing evidence was discovered. Using a black light, the fridge lit up with writing of Metallica and Harley was here.
Mm-hmm.
They had apparently been erased, and then more writing was found on the inside of Kathy's thigh. All of it was done in magic marker, and on her thigh it said, "I was here," with an arrow pointed towards her genitals.
Yeah, I don't like that either. That's sick and twisted.
Kathy's friends directed hold on. So Mike was put under the microscope at
Of
first
course.
because his demeanor didn't help his case. So he was specifically monotone and didn't show a lot of emotion. However, he was cleared. And for Jennifer, she knew like Mike loved Kathy. He
Mhm.
couldn't have done it.
Mhm.
Which a lot of people would say, and then that person would, but Mike had no,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Kathy's friends then directed detectives to an ex of Kathy's named Troy. And it turns out his nickname was Harley, and he was a fan of the band Metallica.
Mhm.
Not only was his nickname Harley, but he also had a Harley Davidson sticker on the back of his truck, and it had been seen outside her apartment on the day that she'd been killed. And
Mm.
yes, I'm remembering now. So I remember reading something about why his truck was there. Um, because it was there at the apartment, but he genuinely didn't have anything to do with this case. So I just
Right.
want to make sure I don't forget that. Harley was a suspect for Kathy's friends because the relationship was toxic and he didn't have an alibi.
Mhm.
So, as you'd guess, he did get picked up for questioning and admitted to writing on the fridge months earlier during a party, but denied
Mhm.
writing anything on Kathy.
Mhm.
He ended up getting arrested and pled not guilty. And what was used to attempt to tie him to the crime was the fingerprint from the phone and blood.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, the blood from the scene did not match Troy's blood type, and when his fingerprints and footprints were taken, they too did not match. So
Mhm.
therefore, the charges were dismissed and he was let go.
Mhm.
So next on the list was a man from Kathy's past, a guy named Michael Howard. And during his investigation, an interesting fact came up when the court ordered a paternity test. We learned, or they learned, he's Courtney's biological father.
Mm.
Despite this, he couldn't be connected to the crime with his fingerprints and footprints on file because he had an alibi.
Mhm.
He had been working and then spent time with his new girlfriend and mom.
Okay.
Plus, he'd also been living in Arizona and had unfortunately zero desire to be in his daughter's life. I mean, I guess that
Which
could
is
be
sad.
it's sad. So it's unfortunate and fortunate because Courtney did have Mike.
Right.
So time continued on, and even though many were questioned, nothing came of it. Courtney ended up living with her maternal grandparents, and even though she didn't have an emotional connection with her grandfather growing up, she was still loved. And her theory is that she reminded him of her mom, and that was really hard for him to process.
Mhm.
So, for example, for Christmas, she got a puppy, she made visits to the cemetery, got a
Mhm.
swing set for her birthday, and knew her numbers by the time she was 3. All
That's
this,
impressive.
yeah, she was nurtured, she was loved.
Yep.
And then when she was in first grade, she sat down on her bed with her grandparents and they offered to tell her about her mom. And of
Mm.
course, she was like, "Yes, please. I want to know."
Mm.
And that's when they said a bad man had hurt her and the mom was up in heaven.
Right.
Her mom loved to bowl, so every time it thundered, she should think about her mom rolling a strike.
Yeah.
I will forever love that.
That's nice. I like
It's a
that.
different perspective. Oh,
Mhm.
so good. So in fourth grade, she was set down again, and they told her her mom had been murdered when someone entered the apartment, beat her up, hi Luke, and slit her neck from ear to ear. So
Mm.
needless to say, Courtney stayed home from school to process that information.
Yeah.
As she got older, she got closer to her grandfather, and when she was 16, he sat her down again with a box of police reports and newspaper clippings.
Mhm.
She was desperate to know everything about her mom, so she read through it all. I give her grandparents so much credit for this.
Hard work.
It's hard work, but she's learning information. I think I think personally 4th grade is really young to know that information, but they gave her the time to be able to process that.
Right.
So I commend them for their actions because they are giving her a gift that I don't think she realized she needed.
Yeah.
So, for decades, the town lived in fear that a killer was among them, and it wasn't uncommon for women to sleep with a weapon under their pillows.
Mhm.
In 2012, evidence was reviewed again, and the fingerprint print found on the phone from the suspect was considered viable to obtain a DNA profile.
That's kind of wild too.
It was turned into CODIS, but unfortunately, it did not come up with a new lead. However, detectives became convinced that this wasn't the only murder that this person had committed. So, fingerprints or DNA from another crime scene should eventually lead to something. But then again, the case quieted down.
Right.
Now, before I tell you the outcome, let's jump over to Mary Catherine Edwards. Alexa's like, fuck you.
But I knew that was coming. It's
Yes, you
fine.
did.
We gotta talk about a couple different ones before we
Yep.
do the other one.
So we're going to jump over to Texas. And I'm not going to be doing as much of a deep dive into the background of Mary Catherine Edwards, mainly because I just couldn't find much. So if someone who knew Kathy ever listens to this, please know the lack of depth isn't meant as a sign of disrespect. So at 31, Catherine was a beloved elementary teacher in the community she grew up in. One day in January of 95, she was supposed to meet up with her twin sister, but never arrived. Knowing something wasn't right after calls went unanswered, her parents went to her townhome. Upon their arrival, they found their daughter deceased.
Mm.
She was in the second floor bathroom, slumped over the tub with her hands cuffed behind her back. They immediately called 911 before moving her onto her back to see if it would help, but she was unfortunately already gone.
Yeah.
When officers arrived, they noticed the home was in disarray. There was also no sign of forced entry, but an ex-boyfriend was seen as a prime suspect before evidence found at the scene cleared him. Semen was left on the bedspread, and DNA did come from a rape kit, but unfortunately didn't lead to anything. So the night before, Catherine and her sister had spent some time together over a glass of wine before her sister left. And at one point in the middle of the night, neighbors heard clomping down the stairs but didn't think much of it. And other neighbors heard a loud banging that lasted about 60 seconds, but they didn't hear a scream, therefore they didn't do anything.
Mm.
Like, that's still got to be hard to process. Like, I heard a murder happen.
I
and
heard something and I didn't do anything about it. Yeah.
But it's still like, if you hear a slight disturbance for a minute and then it quiets down, you're just like, okay, like
That was weird.
yeah. So I can see both sides to that.
Yeah.
So the initial theory was that the killer had a law enforcement background because the handcuffs were the same brand used by the police.
Mm-hmm.
However, as with Kathy's case, this one also went cold. So here's where the code breakers got to work with both of these cases.
Yeah.
So going back to Kathy, 30 years after the murder, so going back to Michigan,
Mhm.
DNA from the phone was sent to Othram. It was a known fact that the blood was only for the killer. And Kathy's was mixed in. With the data profile that came from the sample, Othram genealogy people got to work. And the profile they came up with led to a local Three Rivers family. A couple had 7 children, including 4 boys.
Mm-hmm.
One brother was quickly eliminated because his DNA was already in CODIS.
Makes sense.
The other 2 boys agreed to provide DNA, which eliminated them as well. And that left things to the final brother, Robert Waters.
Mm-hmm.
Fucker.
Shit nugget.
Robert was married with children and had been living in South Carolina for years. And when law enforcement arrived at his home, they explained they'd reopened a case in Three Rivers and wondered if he'd be willing to come down to the police station. He agreed without asking why, but never actually showed up. He knew something was up.
Oh, yeah.
After obtaining a warrant for his DNA and fingerprints, they approached him again, and this time he cooperated because he had to. But of course, this particular department didn't have a live print finger scanning machine, so they had to take his prints via the old school method, paper and ink.
That's funny.
To make matters even worse, they had to take his fingerprints more than once to help get them legible for the lab. And then he spent the next 5 hours at the station waiting.
Good.
And the entire time, he was cool as a cucumber.
Of course he was.
Then a sergeant entered the room to tell him that his print matched the print found at the crime scene, and he was officially under arrest. He had no reaction to the news.
Yeah. You a psychopath.
Yes, 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
To Jennifer, his name didn't sound familiar. However, Mike, the fiance, was familiar with it because Robert was a friend of Mike's from high school. He had visited their apartment once before the murder. And what was strange was at the time, that's when he figured out where Mike and Kathy lived. Like, he figured out where they lived and he approached them out of the blue.
Yeah, I don't like that.
No, not at all. And so Courtney thinks that on the day of the murder, he showed up and Kathy wasn't having it and he didn't take the rejection well.
Shocking.
And unfortunately, Robert would never have his day in court to be held accountable because he died by suicide in his South Carolina jail before he could be sent to Michigan.
Thank you for offing yourself and helping out the community a little bit more. I know we had this conversation last time. I have a lot of feelings, though. I think if you're going to go and live on death row and you know you're fucked, please just do us all a favor so that the taxpayers don't have to pay for every single meal and stitch that you have to get while you are behind bars or all the transports that you have to go on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not sad that he decided to go and off himself.
So the 2020 episode, if I remember correctly, Courtney was like, I don't know if I would have told him anything, if I remember correctly, but she definitely addressed. And I just got the sense that, like, for her, she knew she wasn't getting her mom back.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that she was okay, knowing she's healing, it's the only reason why I'm not going on a rant right now.
Right.
Because it's not about me. It's about her and her family.
Right.
Yeah. So the fact that she's okay with it, she's come to accept it and she's moving on. That makes me very happy for her.
Right.
So Robert had hung himself with his bed sheets. And so going back to Courtney, she still lives in Three Rivers with a family of her own, and she often visits her mom. She was able to meet Kristen and David and thank them for putting in the time to help solve her mom's murder.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just the impact of being able to say thank you to people who have the resources. Like, I cried a little bit in the episode. I was like, oh my God, that's so sweet.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge.
So going back over to Catherine in Texas, in 2020, Rangers took a fresh look at the case as they had been newly connected with Othram. They thought at this point that this would be their only hope. And once the DNA profile came back, a detective that had an amateur interest in genealogy stepped in. And it didn't hurt that her husband was also on the case.
Yeah, it doesn't help.
She was like, move over. I'm doing this. And he was like, ma'am,
yes, honey.
Ma'am. So as she was looking through the matches, she noticed that they were linked to Cajun country in Louisiana. And of course, for us, we're like, okay, here's what this means.
Mm-hmm.
In the late 1700s, people in northern Louisiana often married their neighbors who were family members, which means tracking genealogy can be difficult, to say the least.
Weird and tricky.
Yeah. However, this detective reached out to a DNA match, and this particular woman was a professional genealogist, and the two women worked together to crack the code. We're talking like 5 hours a day, talking to one another, going through a lot of stuff. And they, needless to say, bonded a lot, as you would. Through newspaper articles and census records, they were able to find a yearbook record where there was a couple who married and had 2 sons. One of the 2 had a criminal history from 1981, and it was a sexual assault. And in this particular case, there was a commonality. Hands were tied behind their backs. Unfortunately, this individual survived.
Ooh.
So we're going to jump over to a third individual named Paula, and she arguably is like, it's the hero of Catherine's story.
Right.
In 1981, 19-year-old Paula didn't want to go out one night, but she did promise a friend that she'd go dancing, so she did it. When she decided she was ready to leave the bar, she had the unfortunate luck of having her car stuck in the mud. So she decided to walk to the next gas station and call her mom for a ride. On her way there, she was approached by a car, and after they chatted for a bit, they realized they'd gone to the same exact high school, and he was a police trainee. Trusting what he said, she got in. But unfortunately, she was brought to a nearby park where he threatened her with a knife, tied her hands behind her back, raped her, and then dropped her back off at her house.
No, thank you. No, thank you. You suck.
She was so ashamed that she didn't think anyone would believe her, and she never wanted to talk about it again.
That's so sad.
I know, right? However, a week later, she worked up the courage to go to the police station where she learned that this guy was not, in fact, a police trainee, but a salesman.
Go
Piece of shit.
figure.
True to form in the 80s, the prosecutor minimized the situation because the guy didn't have a criminal history
Oh, okay. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
and worked
That
at,
you know of.
yeah, and worked out a deal where the guy would plead to lesser charges. And Paula didn't have anyone to rely on translating legalese. So other than knowing the guy would be pleading to a felony, she had no idea what this meant.
Mm-hmm.
So she agreed to the plea bargain agreement. For her, she wanted him to be punished, but it clearly wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can guess, the man who pled guilty to the lesser charge in Paula's case was the same man who murdered Catherine.
Uh-huh.
And his name is Clayton Foreman. His name hadn't come up because DNA collection wasn't a thing back at the time of the crime.
Makes sense.
Clayton had gone to the same school as Catherine and her twin, and in another chilling connection, Catherine was friends with his first wife, and both of the girls were bridesmaids at his first wedding.
That's kind of wild.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know if he got married again. I don't remember. But anyway.
Regardless.
Yeah. After Clayton's name came up, he was located in Ohio, and he was he was working as an Uber driver,
Congratulations.
living the high life.
Uh-huh.
His garbage was collected off the street and sent to Othram. Sure enough, a match was made. And the story to get him to the police station in Ohio was that a customer had claimed that something of theirs was stolen. And Clayton knew this wasn't the case when he saw a ranger in the interrogation room. Initially, he thought they were following up on something because he didn't know his DNA had been linked. When he was told the meeting was about Catherine, he denied everything involving the crime, and when confronted with the fact that his DNA was found, he immediately invoked his right to an attorney.
Yeah, you got caught, mother trucker.
Nevertheless, he was arrested using the exact same cuffs that he'd used on Catherine.
Oh, I love that little detail.
I know.
I love it. I love it now like I loved it then.
And he was brought to Texas. And sure enough, officers did let him know that they were the same ones. You piece of shit.
Uh-huh.
In March of 2024, yeah, not that long ago as of this recording, Clayton went on trial and he pled not guilty. The courtroom was packed with friends, family, and former students. Like, that says so much about your impact as a teacher when your students are still there for you decades later.
Oh, yeah.
At the beginning, a recording of the 911 call was played from Catherine's parents, and I think it's the best way to give them a voice because they'd both passed away since then.
Right.
Catherine's twin sister did go on the stand, and she spoke about her childhood before the afternoon when her sister's body was discovered. Tearfully, she recalled the phone call her dad made, sobbing and telling her that her sister was dead.
Mm-hmm.
And for her, a part of her parents died along with her sister, but they were determined to not let what happened ruin their lives.
Good for them.
I know.
That is a hard thing to do.
100%. Not only did Catherine's sister go on the stand, but Clayton's first wife went up as well. She recounted when she discovered a briefcase in his car, and inside was a gun, a set of handcuffs, and pornography. To her knowledge, there was no reason why he should have any of these items. She didn't end up talking to him about it because she was afraid of how he'd react, but she never saw them again. And she would eventually talk to him about the twins, like just reminiscing over high school. And he told her, oh yeah, I've seen them in the hall. I thought they were cute. And because they were twins, he wanted to naturally protect them.
Yes.
The fuck, dude.
You suck.
Yeah. 2 years after their divorce, after the wife had heard about Catherine, she told him, and he had no response. And needless to say, she was like, what? Huh?
Yeah, seriously. It's like, that's not right.
Yeah. And then Paula took her power back and went on the stand. When she was asked to help with Catherine's cold case, she was more than ready to help. She bravely described her sexual assault and did her best to block out everything but the questions being asked. To her, reliving what she went through was the best way to help Catherine get justice. And I still remember her on 2020, tearfully reliving all of that. And I'm
That's hard.
You are a stronger woman than you give yourself credit for.
That's so hard. Good for her for doing that after so long.
Yeah.
Because that's hard.
So after 29 years of waiting, Clayton was found guilty after 52 minutes of deliberation and was sentenced to life in prison. Of course, he is appealing his conviction and will be eligible for parole when he's in his 90s, which I'm not shit talking people. I'm shit talking Clayton specifically, knowing his body type.
He will be lucky to make it to 90.
Yep.
I will take that.
Me too. So to wrap this up, there are vials with DNA all over the country that are part of the backlog, and Othram, along with other labs, I'm sure, are determined to end that and provide answers to families in need.
Thank you, Othram.
Yes, because wow. And I like to think that the world appreciates code breakers. Like, they're just as much of quote unquote foot soldiers as those like with boots on the ground.
Right.
Oh, that was a good one though.
That was a good one though. That was a really, really good one.
Still feel very stupid throughout though. Because I'm nowhere near as smart as like Beth goes.
Dude, these people are brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And I'm like, yeah, nope. That's not my skill set.
Give me being creative and I can hook you up. For you're the math person, which I'm clearly not.
I can do numbers. That kind of sciencey stuff though, that's not for me.
I mean, I am really into like crime scene analysis. And after watching NCIS when I was younger, I was like, Mom, I want to do this. And she was like, good luck with that. You suck at science. I was like, Mom.
Well, thanks, Mama Kay. She's right.
I mean, she wasn't wrong. I wasn't great in biology.
But like, way to squash your dreams there real hard. Ouch.
Yep. And then I realized I had a hard time in biology. And then I was talking with a friend of ours that you graduated high school with. And I was talking to them about biology. And they're like, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't remember some of these terms. And we're learning at the same time. And now that friend is a pharmacist. So
yeah, well, she had that brain.
Yes, she did.
She still does have that brain.
Yeah.
Because she's good at what she does.
Very good.
Yes.
All right. What you got for us for May? I've tried to keep my month straight.
Yes. No.
Yeah, May.
May.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's April.
Okay. Yep. For May, we have The Silent Wife by A.S.A. Harrison. So, Jody and Todd are at a bad place in their marriage. Much is at stake, including the affluent life they lead in their beautiful waterfront condo in Chicago, as she, the killer, and he, the victim, rush haplessly toward the main event. He is a committed cheater. She lives and breathes denial. He exists in dual worlds. She likes to settle scores. He decides to play for keeps. She has nothing left to lose. Told in alternating voices, The Silent Wife is about a marriage in the throes of dissolution, a couple headed for catastrophe, concessions that can't be made, and promises that won't be kept. Sounds like a good one.
Sounds like a wild ride.
I'm pretty psyched.
I know. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up. As always, we come out with episodes when we can, because lives are crazy. So how can people keep up with us?
Well, we can be found on YouTube at Books, Booze, Murder. We can be found on Instagram at Books, Booze, Murder. We can be found on Spotify at Books, Booze, Murder. And then we can be found on TikTok at Books, Booze, Murder Pod. And that's about it.
I actually did do a post on TikTok about this, and I used audio that said, oh shit, we're fucked. And it was like a 6-second clip. Alexa, that video on TikTok has more views.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no, 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 no.
I know.
I was thinking you were going to say that audio, but that's the oh shit I fucked up is good too.
So that one has more views on TikTok than any other video I think that we've done. And then I think I uploaded it to YouTube too, just for shits and giggles. And I think the numbers, I was like, oh, what did I just do to ourselves? So hold on, I'm looking this up right now. I should have been more.
Fun things to share.
So on YouTube, we do post a lot of our TikTok stuff. A lot of them, honestly, like we're still like getting our stuff underneath us.
Yes.
So a lot of our videos have like less than 100 views.
Sure.
We have over 700 on this video. So
Well done.
I'm like, oh my God. So anyway, thank you for listening. And until next time, bye bye.
Toodles.